Hello everyone, back tuning in to the 10th Winter 2019-2020 update from GWV.com. So I've got another real epic update for you today. We've got 71 tabs to go through, so it's going to be a long video, it's going to be an epic. Sit back, get yourself a cup of chair and a couple of nibbles and a cup of tea. You're going to be here for some time. I will put in a couple of breaks as we go through the video, so you'll be able to pause it and go off and stretch your legs and maybe come back to the video a little bit later, or you can carry on watching your way through in one go. However you want to see the video, it's down to you. But I will put in a couple of breaks as we go along, so you'll be able to get up and stretch your legs if you would like to do that. We're going to start off with some outside of the box analogues from our good friend Richard Short. More about that in a moment. We'll end the video with more analogues looking at CET data, and of course in the middle section of the video we'll go through because of his winter methodology and look at things like sea surface temperature anomalies, INSO, and Siberian snow cover, and all of the other aspects that we look at, of course. So, as I say, it could be a long video. If you can't watch it all in one go, then don't worry. This video will be placed on the winter updates and forecast page probably quite early today, because I'm going out this evening. And that means there's not going to be a live stream on YouTube to go with this winter update this week. Actually, the live streams will return a week today for the 11th winter update. So I'll have to get the written version up a little bit earlier than normal, probably around sort of 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock this afternoon, something like that, just before I head off out. So that will be with you probably a little bit earlier than normally. You're able to have a read about and watch video on demand whenever you would like to do that. This all building up to the winter forecast, of course. We're not all that far away from it now. We're into November, into the last month of the winter updates. We've got 13 winter updates penciled in, so we're at number 10 of 13. We are very much at the business end of these winter updates. Of course, the winter forecast, winter 2019-2020, will be released on December the 1st, so in around 4 weeks today. Big thank you to Analogs Guru James Ackrill, as always, for getting our analogues together for us. Big thank you to James for that. And, of course, big thanks to Richard Short for this outside-the-box suggestion that we're going to start this 10th Winter 2019-2020 update with. So, let's get on with it. And, yes, indeed, winter is coming. So, this is the presentation from our good friend Richard Short. It's the out-of-the-box simple winter special for 2019-2020. So, let's see what Richard is suggesting for us for this this winter update outside-of-the-box special. So, Richard begins the presentation. Welcome to a simple methodology for the coming winter 2019-2020. Basically, I'm looking at June's past from 1900 onwards, so not to overcomplicate things. So we're not going back into the 1800s with this outside of the box. We're going to be from 1900 onwards. Richard continues with this year's CET for June coming, that's central temperature, of course, for June coming in at 14.2 Celsius. I have looked back at a maximum of 0.1 degrees either way. Therefore, any June that had a CET of between 14.1 and 14.3, with June 2019 bang in the middle of that range at 14.2. Then looking at winters that follow those Junes, simple but interesting facts to follow. So what did we find? So looking at 14.1 Celsius, we find 1932, 1937, 1958, 1997. Next, it's 14.2 degrees, and we find 1939, 1998, plus 2019, as that's the current year. Next, it's 14.3. We find 1906, 1908, 1913, 1919, 1995, and 2001. Recently, we averaged 1 in every 4 winters being colder than average, subject to my own stats, but the average older stats were 1 in 3.3. So what does this methodology find? Over to James and Gavin for the analogues. So we're going to be looking at the winters of 1906, 1907, 1908, 1909, 1913, 1914, 1919, 2020, 1932, 1933, 1937, 1938, 1939, 1940, 1958, 1959, 1996, 1995, 1996, 1997, 1998, 1998, 1999, and 2001, 2002. Winters 12 in total. And then Richard leaves us with one final thing. We'll have a look at the reanalysis. So Richard says, one final thing I looked at was the difference between CTs of June and July, especially as the difference this year was 3.3 degrees, June 14.2 to July very warm at 17.5. I could only find one match from those selected years higher than 3.3 degrees, which is 95-96, which was 14.3 Celsius difference. No other years were close. Interesting to see 1995 come up, as Gav has mentioned it a few times already. That was a snowy winter starting in November through to March 24 years ago. Is it a coincidence though? Question mark. And then Richard finishes. So to summarise, as we have seen with stats and the analogues, we have split 6 poor winters and 6 good winters for snow lovers, which increases the chances from 1 in 3.3 winters being colder to 1 in 2, or 50% chance. Personally, this is just for fun, and in my opinion depends on solar cycle 24. Either is ending, solar cycle 25 beginning, but I'm sure you will have found this an interesting watch. Special thanks to James Ackrell, Analogues Guru God, and presented with passion by our host Gavin Partridge, who makes these interesting watches indeed. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Outside of Box. Regards, Richard Trott. Okay, so that's the challenge Richard has given us, and now let's go through the data. So here we go. This is the first Outside of the Box winter, 1906-1907. And this one with above average heights out to our west and below average heights up to the north and also to the southeast. And so with this one, it's quite an anticyclonic looking signal, relatively mild. The winds are in from off the Atlantic, but it does have a cold Christmas. Christmas 1906 was quite cold. Our next Outside of the Box analogues year is 1908-1909. This one with above average heights to our north and northwest, below average heights are to our south and southeast, and bringing in east or northeast winds. That's a cold winter for 1908-1909. The next one is 1913-1914. This one with below average heights to the west and to the south, above average heights to our east. And so this is a mild winter, quite an unsettled winter, as well as we bring the winds in from west or southwest. There's a lot of mild weather on offer, and it is quite unsettled at times too. The next Outside of the Box winter is 1919-1920. This one very flat westerly, 100 years ago, of course. Very flat westerly, below average heights up to the north, above average heights to the south, and bringing in these mild west or southwesterly winds. The next winter is 1932-1933. This is a colder winter with above average heights sitting to the north of us, below average heights down to our south and southeast, bringing the winds from an easterly direction. By the way, have you noticed as we go through these analogues that they look ever so slightly different? I'll talk more about that when we get through to the third and final part of this video, but quite exciting times with the analogues. More about that at the end or in the final section of the video. The next winter is 1937-1938 from Richard's Outside of the Box, looking at winters following Junes with a CT of 14.1 to 14.3 back to 1900. This one with the above average heights to the northwest and to the north, below average heights are to the south, and the winds are coming in from an east or northeasterly direction. That's a little bit of a colder winter, perhaps, at times, 37, 38. Big winter here, 1939-1940, severely cold winter. This one in Richard's Outside of the Box analogues. You can see the massive amount of northern blocking that we have up towards Greenland and Iceland, with the jet stream plunged southwards and bringing in these cold east or northeast winds. There is a run of generally mild winds, not all winters were mild, but there's a run of generally mild winters from 1895 until 1940. The first severe winter of the 20th century, in that it had a below zero CET in January 1940, was the winter of 1939-1940, the coldest winter for 45 years. The next winter in Richard's Outside of the Box is 1958-1959. This one with the above average heights to the north, the below average heights to the southwest. A dry and quite cold winter with this one. Fairly cold winter, but reasonably dry too. The next Outside of the Box winter was 1965-1966. This one with high pressure to the north and low pressure to the south. You will think that's a very cold winter. Actually, what happened with this is that it had quite a lot of cold weather in December through to early January. I think there was a cold Christmas in 1965 and then bitterly cold easterly winds in early January 1966. But when the cold weather went away, it never really came back. And I think late January, February, March of 1966 were generally on the mild side. Then we have a long gap through to 97-98. Actually, that's got a little bit wrong. So there we go. That's right. So we go from 1958-1959 through to 1995-1996. So I was saying that that was 1966. In fact, that is 1995-1996. Very sorry about that. My eyes are not getting any better, I have to say. I was sat here squinting up the screen trying to work out which years we're talking about. So let's do that all over again. This is not 1965-1966. This is in fact 1995-1996. It's a cold winter, as Richard said in his presentation, with the below average heights to the south and the above average heights up to the north. And so with this one, we do bring in those cold easterly winds. There we go. It's an easterly winter, and that looks a little bit more like what I'd expect for 95-96 rather than 65-66. Sorry about that mistake. Good job I realised what was happening as I went on to the next slide. So this is in fact a cold winter, lots of easterly winds in 1995-1996. And as Richard said, there is a similarity between the deviation from June to July, the temperature deviation from June to July this year in 2019, to the deviation between June and July in 1995. So that's quite interesting as well. But this is definitely a cold winter, winds in from the east, particularly cold through December, and then the cold is on and off through January, February, March, and even as far as April and May. Still quite a lot of cold easterly winds even then. The next Outside of the Box winter is 97-98. This one very mild winter, exceptionally so, with the above average heights extending up from Africa to Scandinavia, below average heights out of the Atlantic, and we bring up those very, very mild southerly winds, dry but really mild, and especially so in February, where it actually turns very, very warm. Then we've got 98-99 for our next Outside of the Box winter. Again, remember, with this, we are looking at winters following June's with a CD of 14.1 to 14.3. This time we have below average heights up to the north and above average heights out to west-southwest. Winds are in from a northwesterly direction. And then finally we have 2001, 2002. This one, an anticyclonic signal with above average heights to our south, below average heights to the north and to the west. It kind of masks what that winter was, though, because it had quite a cold December 2001, cold frosty weather to early January, and then the Atlantic was unleashed, and from mid to late January through February it actually turns very mild but also very wet in the winter of 2001, 2002. Finally, putting all of that together, this is how all of the Decembers combined are looking. Quite interesting, actually, with Richard's outside of the box analogues for December, with above average heights out to the west and to the northwest, below average heights to the south and to the southeast. The winds are coming in from a northeasterly or easterly direction on average. So it is quite a coldish signal, actually, this set of outside-the-box analogues for December. Maybe suggesting something a little bit colder for December, which is not something that we've seen a great deal of, actually, in our winter updates so far. Generally, December has been trending as the milder month of the winter months with our winter updates so far. But this one, these outside-the-box analogues, do suggest that December could be rather cold, and maybe so in January too. This is how all Januaries combined are looking with our outside the box analogues, or with Richard's outside the box analogues. This time we have above average heights to the north, below average heights to the south, and we're favouring bringing in easterly winds still. So a relatively cold start to the winter could be suggested with these analogues. But what happens in February all change, because then we get lots of below average heights appearing to the north, and the above average heights sort of pull out to the west-southwest of the country, and that is a re-establishment of the westerlies. So by the time we get through to February, a much milder signal, probably not overly wet, but certainly a much milder signal for February. And then that's how March looks. Also probably quite a mild signal with above average heights out to the west and below average heights out to the east, I should say. Below average heights out to the west. A little bit more unsettled for the Marches, but also quite mild as the winds will be pulling up from a southerly southwesterly winter. So these outside the box analogues perhaps suggesting a bit of a front-loaded winter, actually, which is, again, something that we've not seen a great deal of in our winter updates up to now. The cold conditions generally been focusing later in winter, I think, with most of our analogues packages, but this analogues package does, in fact, suggest earlier is better for cold for this winter. Finally, putting all of that together, this is how all winters combined looks for this year's outside of the box update. Looking at June's with a CT of 14.1 to 14.3 since 1900. And it's an anticyclonic signal overall with above average heights close to the country. Does ridge a little bit to the north, though, below average heights to the south. It's not a desperately cold signal, but we've seen what's going on there is that the first half of winter definitely favours colder conditions. The second half of winter definitely favours milder conditions following June's with a CT of 14.1 to 14.2. Right, big thank you to Richard for this year's outside of the box analogues. I'm going to pause the video there, and when I come back, we're going to go through the part 2 of the 10th winter 2019-2020 update. We'll talk about things like ENSO, solar activity, what's happening with Eurasian snow cover, and there'll be many other things as well. So let's pause the video there, go and get yourself a cup of tea and a couple of snacks, and we'll meet back very shortly. See you soon. Okay, we're back and we are ready to resume the 10th Winter 2019-2020 update from Gaz Weather Vids. So we've talked for just under 20 minutes and the first section of video was looking at our good friend Richard Short's Outside the Box Analogues. Big thank you to Richard for suggesting those analogues and for his presentation. So definitely those analogues favouring perhaps cold earlier in the winter, which is, as I say, something that we haven't seen a great deal of within our analogues packages this season of updates. Generally, it's been the later winter months that have been more favoured the cold weather than the earlier winter months. So a little bit different with Richard's analogues, and definitely food for thought. Big thank you to Richard. And again, sorry about that little mistake where I was mixing up 1995-96 with 1965-1966. Not sure how that happened, other than the fact that the eyes still aren't that good. In fact, they're getting a little bit worse as I'm getting older. So I do find myself, when I'm doing these analogues, peering at the screen, trying to see which is we're talking about. But the mistake is all mine, nothing to do with Richard. So again, big thank you to Richard for that. Right, let's carry on then with the 10th Winter 2019-2020 update. We're going to start off with the oceans for this second part of the video. So this is how sea surface temperature anomalies were looking across the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans when we did last week's 9th Winter 2019-2020 update. We've got our three areas of interest. We've got the ENSO region just here. That's the equatorial Pacific Ocean, of course. We've got the Northern Pacific over there. And then we've got the North Atlantic over here. So that's how things looked last week. Let's have a look at the very latest. This is it. So dealing with the ENSO region, first of all, again, let's go back to last week and focus on that. There it is. That is the ENSO region. Let's go forwards and focus on the latest from the 31st of October from NOAA. Very little change. We still have our signature for being at ENSO neutral. So we are neither at El Nino and nor are we at La Nina. We are just at ENSO neutral with a few warmer areas, particularly over here in the eastern portion of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, but not warm enough to get us to into an El Nino threshold. So we're at ENSO neutral, and I suspect we're going to stay at ENSO neutral. I think that winter of 2019-2020 will be an ENSO neutral winter, and we will see through reanalysis and analogues what that could mean in 2 weeks' time. That will be the 12th winter 2019-2020 update will focus on ENSO and ENSO neutral, and we'll see what that could mean for our winter fate. So that will be quite interesting one in 2 weeks' time. Let's go further north into the Northern Pacific. So again, that's how things were looking in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean last week. Let's look at the latest now. Very little change. It remains warmer than average up here in the northeastern part of the actual Pacific Ocean. But as the weeks are going by, I think we are cooling things down in this sort of area. So compared to where we was when we started, I'll probably look at this next week, compared to where we was when we started with these winter updates back on the 1st of September, I think this area has cooled. It has pushed this significantly warmer average area sort of out into the central part of the northern Pacific Ocean. So maybe signs that things are getting cooler up there. I mean, we're not just talking about the very shallowest of the waters close to the coast, because they are prone to rapid temperature change with the weather, those very shallow waters close to the coast. But I think this is starting to affect sort of slightly deeper waters in that sort of area, and again, that sort of area. So possibly signs that the Northeast Pacific is just cooling down a little bit as we're going week by week, but still generally significantly warmer than average. And then going back to last week for the Atlantic, again, that's how things were looking in the Northern Atlantic Ocean last week. Nice round circle there. This is how things are looking right now. So the tropical Atlantic is still pretty warm, actually, although we have had quite an active hurricane and tropical storm season. More about that in a moment. Although we had quite a warm hurricane tropical storm season, the sea surface temperature on this through the tropical Atlantic still look generally quite warm, and over here through the Gulf of Mexico and the Caribbean as well. And I suppose the reason for that is that the storms have generally been developing a little bit further northwards than normal. They've been developing in this sort of area, I think, very frequently rather than down here. So that probably explains the difference. Going further north, so we have got a cooler area through the central part of the North Atlantic. That's primarily down to churn, I think, from these storm features that we've had through this season. And to the south of Greenland, still looking pretty warm there, especially over towards the Canadian side. We haven't got a tripole, but you would look at that and say, possibly we're not all that far from it. You would need to see this area cooling down quite substantially. And that's something that we haven't seen so far this season. We are getting quite late on now. So certainly it looks like we're going to begin this winter without a tripole. But with, as we've been explaining, generally quite a warm North Atlantic Ocean. Overall, very little change with the oceans week by week as we've gone along through these winter updates. I have to say, we have seen both the Pacific and the Atlantic Oceans generally quite stable, I think, through this autumn. But we'll continue to monitor and more about what's happening in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean next week. This is how the SOI is looking at the moment. So this is the Southern Oscillation Index from Queensland Government, part of Bureau of Meteorology down there in Australia. The SOI is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. It's not driving anything. It just tells you what the atmosphere is doing. So when the SOI is negative, you are going to find that the atmospheric setup in terms of the air pressures between Darwin and Tahiti. It's a way of measuring air pressure between Darwin and Tahiti, essentially. So when the SOI is negative, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of an El Nino setup. When the SOI is positive, the atmospheric setup will be reflective of La Nina. Let's see what's happening in terms of our daily numbers. So we have had negativity of the SOI going back into the latter part of October. 25th of October there coming out at minus 16, and the 26th of October coming out at minus 10. These are our air pressure measurements, by the way, Darwin and Tahiti, or Darwin versus Tahiti, I suppose. 27th of October we've got plus 1. 28th of October we have minus 8, that's El Nino type setup. 29th of October we have minus 11. 30th of October we have minus 12, but the 31st of October minus 2, 1st of November plus 2, and the very latest is the 2nd of November coming out at minus 2 again. And if we go back before that, we can see we did get some positive numbers there, very positive numbers I should say, on the 19th and the 20th of October, plus 10 and plus 11. So we're exchanging positive and negative numbers, albeit probably still a little bit on the negative side, and this again would tie in with being at ENSO neutral, really. The red line here is the 30-day average for the SOI. You can see back in early October, very negative at minus 12. Lifted up through October. We lost that extreme negativity, went up close to minus 2. That's sort of ENSO neutral. Really. That's where we are right now, around minus 4. So again, when you're in this sort of area, you are sort of still having an atmospheric state, but is slightly reflective of El Nino, but basically you're at ENSO neutral. And as I say, I think ENSO neutral is going to be where we will be during this winter of 2019-2020 in terms of ENSO. And in 2 weeks' time, in the 12th winter 2019-2020 update, we will look with reanalysis and analogues at what ENSO neutral winters, probably following an El Nino, could mean for winter of 2019-2020. Haven't talked to James about that, so that'll be a little bit of a surprise to James, I would have thought, but we'll get that done for the 12th update, I'm sure. Right, moving on to Atlantic hurricane season for 2019. So this is the 2019 Atlantic hurricane season page from Wikipedia. This image just here is showing all of these storms and hurricanes that we've had this season. You notice how a lot of these are going up into the northern Atlantic Ocean. Many of these lines are heading towards the UK. interestingly. They don't always do that. A lot of times these storms will go in that sort of direction and go in that sort of direction, and also sometimes go in that sort of direction. So quite an unusual season. We've seen so many of these storms and ex-hurricanes moving up towards northern parts of Europe. But anyway, the total numbers for this season are now looking like this. So for total depressions for this hurricane season, for total tropical depressions, we are standing at 19. For total storms, we're standing at 17. Those are both up 1, I think, on last week. For hurricanes, we're standing at 6. That's unchanged on last week. And for major Category 3 or above hurricanes, we're standing at 3. And again, that is unchanged on last week. This is an above average season, as we explained in previous updates, so they confirm it here on the Wikipedia page. The season is also the 4th consecutive year of above average and damaging seasons, dating back to 2016. Above average, yes, but not hyperactive at this stage, I don't think. So, as I say, active season, and could still be some more storms, especially given that the sea surface temperature is there in the tropical Atlantic are relatively warm for this time of the year. I wouldn't totally rule out a late tropical storm or hurricane getting going in the next week or two, and we'll continue to monitor the 2019 Atlantic hurricane activities, or Atlantic hurricane season. This how the solar disk is looking on our side of this today from solarham.net. So we don't have a spot this solar disk, actually. Have one little sunspot just there. Otherwise, though, not much going on. Solar activity is at very low levels, and Solarham is forecasting that it will remain at very low levels. This is the GWV's 10th winter update solar activity tracker, updated by our good friend James Acrill. So we continue to see that we are at solar minimum. We have our trend lines, which are the thick red and thick green lines that are flatlining on the floor. The orange line is depicting each individual day's worth of sunspots. So you see we are getting the occasional day of one sort of mild sunspot in between these long stretches without any sunspots. This sunspot just here is very interesting. That sunspot there is actually a sunspot for solar cycle number 25. Now, that does not mean that we have ended solar minimum and we are starting solar cycle 25. Far from it. We probably have another 6 months or more for solar cycle 24 left. We're probably going to be at solar minimum for the next 6 months, certainly through this winter I would have thought will be at solar minimum. But there is an overlap, and actually we got the first sunspot for solar cycle 25 back in 2016, I think. We have had 1 or 2 since then. As I say, that is a solar cycle 25 sunspot. So when solar cycle 25 begins and they start to look at the sunspots within that solar cycle, that will be classified as a solar cycle 25 sunspot. But as I say, that does not mean that we have ended solar minimum and we have begun the new solar cycle. More generally, though, with this, we can see that we are continuing to be at solar minimum. Very, very low levels of solar activity, just the occasional day of a sunspot, but outnumbered vastly by the days where we don't have any sunspots. Compared to earlier in the year, before May, that's when the change happened in May. Before that, we see that most days had sunspots, and the days that didn't have sunspots were outnumbered by the days that did. That's the flip on where we are now, where most days do not have sunspots and are outnumbering the days that do have sunspots. This tells us, therefore, that we are and continue to be and will continue to be at solar minimum for the time being. QBO next. So this is showing every day's QBO data updated to the 2nd of November. Now on this chart, the westerly QBO is the sandy coloured area, the easterly QBO is the blue coloured area. At the moment, we are transitioning from a westerly QBO to an easterly QBO. Remember, this is just an index that's reflecting the strength of the zonal westerlies, essentially. So when you're in a westerly QBO, the zonal westerlies are strengthened. When you're in an easterly QBO, the zonal westerlies are weakened. By the way, we don't have the number in yet for the QBO during October. We don't have that yet. It's only the 2nd of November. It will take a few days for NOAA to update that. We will definitely have that number for you, though, next week. We'll definitely be able to bring you October's quasi-biennial oscillation number, official, next week. Anyway, look at this. At the top here, we have the easterly QBO descending down through the atmosphere. So that's 10 HPA, just very top level of the atmosphere. This is down on the surface. You can see how these blue and green colours are edging downwards from the top of the atmosphere. And in the past few days, we have actually started to see these greeny blue colours beginning to get almost to the level of the troposphere. That's 30 to 50 HPA. So to get into the ECQBO, we have to see it descend from the top of the atmosphere, from 10 HPA down to 30 to 50 HPA. When it gets there, then we will be able to say that we have started this ECQBO, or we are seeing the ECQBO within the troposphere, if you like. So it's got to get down to around there, where it was sort of May, June, July of 2017. When those green blue colours get down to that dashed line just there, that is when we will know that the ECQBO has moved into the troposphere. It's very, very close to starting to do so now, and I think by the time we get to the winter, we will probably be going into the easterly phase of the QBO. As I say, we will have that QBO number for you. We'll have that for you next week for the 11th Winter 2019-2020 update. This is how things are looking in the stratosphere. So this is from the JMA, looking at the temperature over North Pole at 10 HPA. As I say, 10 HPA, if you think, go back to this, if you think that 10 HPA is kind of like up there in the stratosphere, one of the top levels of the atmosphere, right at the very, very top. So that's how the temperature is currently looking at 10 HPA. It's around minus 70, indicated by that black line. It's a little bit under average. The grey line is a trend for this time of the year. So the temperature at 10 HPA is a little bit cold now. If you go a little bit lower down to 30 HPA, kind of like the top of the start of the troposphere, I suppose. That's how things look at 30 HPA, and again, a little bit colder than average, not dramatically so, but just a little bit under the grey line. When the temperature is cold and average at 10 HPA, it will normally be a signal for increasing the polar vortex. And with that, you tend to find that the Arctic oscillation goes into its positive phase. We're not really seeing that, though, at the moment. This is the Arctic oscillation observed and forecast chart. The black line shows where we've been with the AO. The red line's at the end, where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the Arctic oscillation to go. Remember, it's just an index that's reflecting atmospheric state, as with so many of these indexes, like the QBO, like the SOI. Again, the AO is just an index that's reflecting the atmospheric state. When the AO is positive, you will have tend to have low pressure over the North Pole. That's the kind of thing you associate with a strengthened polar vortex and a colder than average temperature in the stratosphere over the pole. But when the Arctic oscillation is negative, you tend to have high pressure up over the North Pole. You tend to have blocking. So where we are right now, the Arctic oscillation is just weakly positive, but the GFS ensemble is actually forecasting the AO to go into a very negative phase through the first half of November. This does look as though it's indicative of quite an extensive amount of northern blocking appearing across the Arctic and maybe over the North Pole, possibly Greenland even, during the first half of November, which is not something that you would expect to see with the temperature being cold and average at 10 HPA. So we talked about this in the video last week. It looks like we still have a disconnect between what's happening in the what's happening in the stratosphere in terms of the temperature and also the zone of wind, which I'll talk about in a moment, and what's happening in the troposphere in terms of high pressure blocking actually over the Arctic, even though things in the stratosphere look like they should be supporting a strengthened polar vortex. Bit of a disconnect going on between the troposphere and the stratosphere again this week. The North Atlantic Oscillation looks like this. Again, the black line shows where we've been with the NEO. The red line's at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NEO to go. Now, this has been in a prolonged negative phase other than from sort of late August into the middle of September. This period just here did have a period of positivity of the NEO. Didn't last all that long, and then the NEO started going back into its negative phase again, where it had been right the way since sort of late April. Now, we are actually slightly positive with the NEO at the moment. We're just there. Next week is really going to have sort of neutral conditions for the NEO, but it does look as though as we go towards the middle part of November, the GFS ensembles are starting to trend the NEO more positive. That could just be because it's in the extended range of the GFS and its ensembles. So obviously that's in the unreliable part. So it may not happen anyway. If it does, it could just be something that's temporary, and then we will go back into the negative NEO again. Or alternatively, this could be the start of a shift in the NEO setup, which, as I say, has been in a prolonged negative phase since April, other than for this sort of 3-week period just here from late August to the middle of September. So we keep a close eye, I think, on the NEO in the next few days. It does look as though by mid-November we could have positive NEO conditions, but again, that's unreliable. It's extended part of the GFS and the GFS ensembles, and we'll just wait and see where that's going. And then again, going back to 10 HPA, this is how things are looking in terms of the zonal winds. So again, the zonal winds are a reflection of the polar vortex. Essentially, when you've got a strong zonal wind, you would typically have a strengthened polar vortex. When you've got a weakened zonal wind, you would typically have a weaker polar vortex, sometimes even northern blocking. Now, this is from weatheriscool.com, fantastic website. Do check out Weather is Cool if you can. Loads of different coloured lines with this, and I haven't got time to go into all of them. If you want to know what every single line represents, have a look at the first winter 2019-2020 update that we did on the 1st of September. We covered it in that one. What I can tell you though is that the most important line is probably the black line, because that's the trend line. So zonal winds should be strengthening at this time of the year. So again, coming back here, as the temperature at 10 HPA in the stratosphere over North Pole is getting colder, so the zonal wind should be getting stronger, and that is all reflective of the polar vortex strengthening and increasing at its roots in the stratosphere. Now, where we are right now in terms of the strength of the zonal wind at 10 HPA is just there. So we are a little bit stronger than average. And in the next sort of week to 10 days, the GFS ensembles is going for a very, very strong zonal wind indeed. Just about the strongest on record for that particular date period into like the second week of November, I suppose. By the way, these are the monthly periods just here. So that's November there. Whoops, let's get rid of that. So that's November just there. That's December just there, that's January just there, and that is February just there, covering the full winter period, of course. So the GFS ensembles, indicated by those green lines, are definitely going for a dramatic strengthening of the zonal winds, powering up of the zonal winds, if you like, in the next week to 10 days, which is interesting given that the Arctic Oscillation is going increasingly negative in the next week to 10 days. Again, that shows the disconnect between the stratosphere and the troposphere. But we see them, as we get through towards the middle of November, the zonal winds begin to fall away. And that is quite a dramatic fall in the strength of the zonal winds, actually, from there to there in a few days. Quite a dramatic fall. And if we follow that on with the other coloured lines, the 3 pink and 1 blue line, which are from the CFS V2, we can see how all of these lines are actually falling down almost into a reversal. They do actually get into reversal of the zonal winds in December, which is very, very unusual to see that. Quite dramatic. So we have that one just there, in early December that's going for a reversal of the zona wings. That one just there is going for a reversal of the zona wings around Christmas. This one, this blue line just here, is doing it in the middle of December, and there is the other pink line just there, I think. That one looks like it's doing it sort of late December as well. All four CFS V2 members today seem to be going for a reversal of the zona wings in December, which is very, very unusual. Normally, and would be associated probably with a sudden stratospheric warming. Which again is very unusual to happen in December, although it did happen last year around Christmas and New Year. But normally sudden stratospheric warmings happen later in the winter through January and February, and even sometimes into March. So very, very interesting what the CFS is doing there. Definitely it wants to send the zona wings into reverse through the course of December. And again, that'll be associated with a sudden stratospheric warming in December, and quite unusual that happened in December, and quite unusual to have such a strong signal for that from the CFS V2. Of course, it's only a long-range model, so it's unreliable, and it could look very different when we look at these charts next week. But I have to say, last year, you may remember that the sudden stratospheric warming that we had around Christmas and New Year last year was pretty well forecast actually by the CFS. As we saw last year, just because you have a sudden stratospheric warming and a reversal of the zona wings in the winter does not mean we will get cold from it. We didn't get particularly cold from that sudden stratospheric warming that we had last Christmas and New Year. It never really propagated down into the troposphere properly. But there we go. It looks like the CFS at the moment, anyway, is quite keen on a reversal of the zona wings in December, which would be associated with the sudden stratospheric warming. Right, the last thing we're going to look at in this second part of the video is going to be Siberian snow cover. So that's how things are looking across Scandinavia and Siberia last week on Friday the 25th of October. Let's have a look at the very latest, and what an increase in snow cover we've seen up to the 1st of November. Pretty much all of Russia is now covered with snow, right way back to the border with Europe. Much of central northern Scandinavia is also covered with snow as well. Again, if we go back to last week and compare it to this week, look at the difference there between last week and this week in terms of that snow cover. A real surge has taken place in the closing week of October across much of Russia. If we compare that with past years, this is how things looked last year in 2018 on the 1st of November. So we are ahead of last year for both Scandinavian and Russian snow cover, although had pushed into western parts of Russia at this point last year. But we have more snow cover this year compared to last year. That's 2017. We're ahead of 2017. Whoops, we're ahead of 2017 this year compared to last year. So let's see, what have we done there? So that's 2012, that's 2017. Okay, so that's 2019 just there. Sorry about that. So that's how things are looking at this point in 2017. We're ahead 2017 for Scandinavian snow cover. That is 2016. At this point in 2016, the snow cover pushed into Eastern Europe, so we're behind 2016. That's 2015. I think we're a little bit ahead of 2015 for both Scandinavian and also for Russian snow cover. That's 2014, we're ahead of that for both Scandinavian and Russian snow cover. That's 2013, well ahead of 2013 at this point. Let's get rid of this, that's annoying, let's get rid of that. So this is 1st November 2019, we are well ahead of 2013 this year. That's 2012 on the 1st of November. When again in the final week of October there was a surge across Russia and Scandinavia. So compared to 2012, probably quite closely matched the Russian snow cover, a little bit behind it the Scandinavian snow cover. We're ahead of 2011, we're ahead of 2010, we're ahead of 2009, well ahead of 2008 and 2007 for both Scandinavian and also for Russian snow cover. Probably probably behind for Scandinavian snow cover on 2006 and ahead for Russian snow cover. Ahead of 2005 for Scandinavian snow cover and also for Russian snow cover. Ahead for 2004. that's 2003. I think we're ahead of 2003 Scandinavian. And for Russian snow cover, that is 2002. So we're ahead again for Russian snow cover, definitely, perhaps a little bit behind Scandinavian. Ahead for Russian snow cover and Scandinavian snow cover, I think, of 2001 and also 2000 as well. Well ahead of 1999. Look at the difference between this year and 1999 for snow cover. And finally 1998, which we are well ahead of once again. So we've done really, really good for snow cover in the final days of October. Let's see how that happened. So this is the 25th of October 2019, last week. That was the situation. This is the 26th again. Very little difference. 27th. 28th, it begins to move. That's when it starts to move, pushing in towards the northwest of Russia and also pushing further south across Scandinavia. That's the 29th of October. And then the 30th of October sees a real surge in towards the west of Russia. That's the 31st of October, again, picking up pace. That's the 1st of November, continuing again to spread into west of Russia. This does have similarities with what happened in 2012. This is the 25th of October 2012. Look how the snow cover surged from the 26th to the 27th, even into central parts of Europe, can you believe, by the 27th of October. That's a very, very dramatic surge in snow cover that happened there in the closing days of October, surged into Central and Eastern Europe, surged across most of Scandinavia too. But by the start of November, actually beginning to pull back a little bit into the western Russia. But kind of similar this year to what's happened there. I'll just see if I can refresh the page, see if I can show you the latest for the 2nd of November. I might not be able to do that. Oh yes, it has updated, and we see very little change actually. Perhaps pull back a little bit from the far west of Russia, but generally I think we can say that the last week of October did see major and significant gains in snow cover across Siberia and Russia, or across Russia because Siberia was already covered. So major gains across Russia in snow cover through the closing days of October. Probably not overly gaining across Scandinavia, but we have done pretty well across Scandinavia during October anyway. We haven't lost anything across Scandinavia during October. We definitely didn't lose anything in that last week, but probably didn't gain a great deal. The gains were really across the west of Russia. Done very, very well with that. And of course, the reason we look at that is that a rapid increase in snow cover across Russia and also Scandinavia during October can translate back to strengthened Siberian high. We've spoken about this in past videos. I think the similarity between this year and 2012 is quite interesting and could be a little bit significant, but I won't say any more than that at the moment. Right, we've talked for over 50 minutes. We've got our final part free to go. We're going to look at October central temperature and look at winter analogues as well. So I'll pause the video there. Go and get yourself a drink of water. Go and get yourself a couple more snacks. We'll meet back in around 2 seconds' time, and we'll go through part 3, final part of this 10th winter 2019-2020 update, which will look at October central temperature analogue. So I'll see you very soon. Alright, we're back and we are ready to resume the 3rd and final part of the 10th Winter 2019-2020 update. Been a real epic, talked for over 50 minutes. We've still got the 3rd and final part to go, looking at October centering temperature analogues. So I hope you've enjoyed this 10th, I should say, Winter 2019-2020 update. Please let me know in the comments if you enjoyed it. No live stream today, so you won't be able to let me know in the live stream. I'm going to have the evening off, going to the theatre. So you won't be able to tell me in the live stream, but you can tell me in the comments if you've enjoyed this 10th Winter 2019-2020 update. Right, so central temperature then. This is the CET page at the UK Met Office. If we scroll down, we can see that October CET came out at 10.0. which is 0.6 of a degree below average. It was a colder than average October. So the CET range that we're going to be looking at for these analogues, going to be 9.8 to 10.2, placing, of course, October 2019 at 10.0, slap bang in the middle of that CET range. So this is our first winter. It's the winter of 1838-1839, following an October CT of 9.8 to 10.2. By the way, I said when we did the first batch of analogues for Richard's Outside of the Box, so I've got some interesting news about the analogues. So if I just highlight this just here, V3, this is actually a new version of the analogues at NOAA that we are onto now. We're onto version 3, and that means that we are now able to go beyond 1850 for our analogues of reanalysis. You remember we've spoken about this in past videos, that as far back as we can go with the analogues of the reanalysis was to 1850. Well, now we can actually go further back than that with reanalysis. We go all the way back to 1836. So until version 3, which came on stream a few days ago, until version 3, we would not have been able to show you this chart for the winter of 1838-1839. So, us weather geeks and analogues geeks do get rather excited about these sort of developments, I have to tell you. So when James and I noticed this version 3 of the reanalysis data at NOAA, when we noticed it a few days ago, we did get very, very excited about it. Anyway, let's get back to the analogues. And that's the reason that, by the way, the view looks slightly different to what you've been used to. I think the colours are a little bit more intense. Maybe it's a little bit easier to make out. Let me know in the comments whether you can see the difference between version 3 and version 2, which is the version we was using up to last week. Please let me know in the comments whether you can see that difference. I think the colours just a little bit more intense with version 3. It's slightly easier to make out the troughs and the ridges. Anyway, I've been off on a tangent on that. Sorry about that, but very, very exciting times for us weather geeks. Right, so coming back to the analogues then. So this is our first winter for this analogues package, following October CETs of 9.8, 10.2. This winter of 1838, 1839. Looks like it was quite a coldish winter with below average heights to the east and above average heights out to the west. And the winter of 1938, 1939 would leave us then bringing quite a cold northwest wind. I know winter before that, 1837, 1838, was very cold, really severe winter. This one, slightly less so, but it does look as though it was a pretty cold winter in its own terms. The next winter, following October CET range of 9.8 to 10.2, is 1860, 1861. This one has above average heights to the north and below average heights to the south, bringing in the winds from an easterly direction. That looks like it was a cold and wintry winter as well. The next winter, following an October CT of 9.8 to 10.2, is the winter of 1863, 1864. This one with the above average heights again out to the west, with below average heights to the south-southeast. Looks a little bit more westerly, this one. I don't think it's quite as cold, but perhaps had its moments for wintry type conditions. The next winter is going to be 1864, 1865. This one a really unsettled winter. Lots of low pressure, not just across the UK, but across much of Europe as well. We do have a blocking signal, but it's over towards the Canadian side of the Arctic and Greenland. Just a very, very unsettled winter, this one. Probably a really wet winter in 1864, 1865. Then we've got 1871, 1872. And at one time, version 1 of this reanalysis, of these reanalysis suites, you could only go back as far as 1871. That was a very long time ago, though. So, back to the winter of 1871, 1872. Again, very unsettled, below average heights over and to the west of the country. And there we go, be bringing the winds from off the Atlantic. That's a mild, wet winter for 1871. 1872. The next winter is a severely cold winter. It's 1878, 1879, following October CT CT range of 9.8 to 10.2. This one has below average heights to our southeast, blocking up towards Greenland, and we will bring in the winds from a east or northeasterly direction. That's a severely cold winter in 1878, 1879. The last time we had a yearly CT of under 8 degrees in the sevens for a whole year was back in 1879, and this severely cold winter of 1878, 1879 was a big part of that. The next winter is 1832, 1880 to 1883, I should say. So it's been a very long video, so I've got my excuses ready for making any mistakes. So this one, we're bringing in the westerly winds, and it's mild and unsettled for the winter of 1883. The next winter is 1884. Lots of winters from the 1800s in this particular analogues package, you'll notice. So this one, with above average heights tending to be over to the south of the country, below average heights up to the north, that looks like a relatively mild and dry winter for the winter of 1883. 1884. The next winter is 1893, 1894. This one, again, mild and Atlantic driven, bringing in westerly winds with that particular winter. And then we've got 1897, 1898 showing up next with, again, quite a mild signal, below average heights up towards Greenland and Iceland, above average heights from the Atlantic, Central Europe, and again, we're bringing in those west to southwesterly winds. Right, finally, we make it into the 20th century. So this is 1900, 1901, again, following an October CT range of 9.8 to 10.2. This one's a colder winter with below average heights to the east of the country and above average heights up towards Greenland. Some quite cold weather then in the winter of 1900, 1901. A long gap to 1924, 1925, with below average heights out to west of the country, above average heights to the south and the southeast. This is a wet and mild winter with the wind coming in from the southwest in the winter of 1924, 1925. Another cold winter follows. This is 1928, 1929. I did say it during the earlier package of analogues that there weren't many cold winters in the first 40 years of the 20th century. There were a couple, though. There was 1917. And there was also 1928, 1929. And you can see why this was a cold winter. It has the above average heights up there towards Greenland, with the below average heights to the south and the southeast. You can see we would have been pulling in cold easterly winds. That was a very cold winter for 1928, 1929. Then we've got 1933, 1934, an anticyclonic winter, quite a coldish winter as well, with this one above average height centred over the top of the country, so dry and cold in the winter of 33, 34. Another really big winter then. We've got 46, 47. This is kind of like the daddy of cold winters other than 62, 63. There's perhaps two daddies of cold winters. This one, 47, look at the blocking up to the north. I definitely think with these, with version 3 of these reanalysis charts, the colours are more intense and they show up that northern blocking so much better. Extensive high pressure sitting in the northern latitudes, lots of low pressure with the jet stream going down there, and of course we have those easterly winds going from Russia to Canada across the northern hemisphere. Severely cold winter in 1947. Didn't start until late January, but when it got going, my word, did it get going. And then we've got 1948, 1949. This one is a dry and mild winter with above average heights again over UK, much of Western Europe. This is 1966, 1967, with the above average heights out to the northwest and the below average heights to the east. Generally, the winters in the 1960s were cold, but this is a rather less cold one, actually, in 66, 67. 67, 68 is quite a coldish winter next. Again, we're following a CT range of 9.8 to 10.2. This one with above average heights out to our west, below average heights to our east, bringing in northerly winds. especially so in January and February of 1968, regular cold snaps. Then we've got 75, 76 turning up with low pressure up to the north, high pressure over and to the west of the country. That's a mild and dry winter, 75, 76. 1982, 1983 is our next winter. So this one, below average heights up to the northwest, below average heights out to southwest, winds in from a westerly direction. Generally quite mild in the first half of winter, gets colder in February through to spring. 91, 92 is an incredibly dull winter. It has high pressure part over the top of the UK through virtually the whole of the winter. It's dry, but it's very, very dull and just a really boring winter, that one. 91, 92, that is one to forget. 94, 95 is a mild, wet and windy winter with low pressure to the north and high pressure to the south. We bring in those westerly winds. And then we've got 97, 98 showing up again. I think 97, 98 is showing up a lot this year, but I wouldn't necessarily rate it all that high because it did have a Super Nino. So although we're seeing 97, 98 a lot in our analogs packages this year, again, I'm a bit dubious about it as an analog for this winter, purely because it had the Super Nino going on, which we're not going to have this winter. But it's a very mild and dry winter, exceptionally warm in February of 1998. And then finally we have 2002, 2003. Following an October CT range of 9.8 to 10.2. This one with high pressure over Scandinavia, bringing in easy winds. It looks like it should be a cold winter, but actually it wasn't a particularly cold winter. It's one of those winters that never really came together. Putting all of that together, this is how all December's combined look following that October CT range. And by the way, we have to narrow the CT range down a little bit more. This is a CT range from 9.9 to 10.1 for the all years combined. So for December, we have above average heights out to the west and also to the northeast, below average heights up to the northwest. It's a very complicated, messy pattern. There's a little bit of cold potential in there. It does suggest a bit of a southerly tracking jet stream, I think, going into southern Europe, and potentially something a little bit colder coming in from the east. All January's combined looks anticyclonic with high pressure over top of the country. Does go a little bit to the north, so you could envisage we pull in some colder winds from the northeast as well. Not a particularly cold analogue, I have to say. All February's combined look like that, so looks much more unsettled in February with low pressure over to the west-southwest of the country, a very weak blocking signal over Scandinavia. I think February likely to be quite a mild and wet month with this CT range. And then we go through to the all March's combined pattern, which looks a little bit more conducive for cold. Then we do start to get some higher pressure building over Greenland and Iceland with low pressure to our northeast. You can imagine we will probably on average be bringing in winds from a northeasterly direction at times with those marches. Finally, putting all of that together, this is how all winters combined are looking when we have an October CT range of 9.9 to 10.1. And it does have a Scandinavian high, so that's the good news if you want a cold winter, but it does also have low pressure around Greenland and Iceland. Does suggest a bit of a southerly tracking jet stream, quite a lot of low pressure across southern parts of Europe, so inconclusive really, but not out of the realms of impossibility, but we might have something colder in the winter following that October CET range. And then finally, if you've been enjoying the 10th Winter 2019-2020 update, please can you consider becoming a patron for GWV. It's got 62 patrons so far. Hello, and a big thank you to our 62 patrons. We very much hope that you are enjoying the videos and winter updates. If you'd like to become a patron for GWV, all you need to do is come to GWV's Patreon page, sign up for a Patreon account, and then give an ongoing monthly donation to GWV. It could be anything from $1 a month upwards, and you'll become a patron of GWV to get a shout out in videos. So thank you very much for doing that. Alternatively, you can become a PayPal donor, And you just do that by going to GWV's PayPal page, sign into your PayPal account, and then give a donation to GWV. This could be any amount of money that you would like. And that's absolutely great, absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much to all of our patrons and donors. You're helping us to pay for GWV and keep the content online. So a big thank you to everybody for doing that. Right, we've talked for 1 hour, 7 minutes. A true epic, again, for this 10th Winter 2019-2020 update. I hope so much that you have enjoyed it. Thank you so much for sticking with it. Let us know in the comments what you think. As far as those last package of analogs are concerned, I think overall they are quite in line with the analogs that we've seen through this season, which is, broadly speaking, the analogs have not been suggesting a particularly cold winter in their own terms, but all the time there has tended to be occasional very cold or even severely cold winters thrown in. So that continues really with this set of analogs, and that was something that I noticed as we was going through the analogs. I thought I'd just throw that in at the end. Right, 1 hour, 8 minutes. I'm going to have to wrap the video up there. Thank you so much for sticking with this 10th Winter 2019-2020 update. I hope you've enjoyed it. Let us know in the comments what you thought. This video will be placed on the Winter Updates and Forecast page with a written summary. I'll get up earlier for you today. No live stream tonight. Having the evening off. The live streams will return with next week's 11th Winter 2019-2020 update. But all that remains is for me to say thank you so much for watching. And that's all for now.